President Obama, I think there are real opportunities to get things done in Congress. As I said before, I take Speaker Boehner and Mitch McConnell at their words that they want to get things done. I think the American people would like to see us get some things done. The question is going to be, are we able to separate out those areas where we disagree and those areas where we agree? I think there are going to be some tough fights on areas where we disagree. If Republicans seek to take health care away from people who just got it, they will meet stiff resistance from me. If they try to water down consumer protections that we put in place in the aftermath of the financial crisis, I will say no. And I'm confident that I'll be able to uphold vetoes of those types of provisions. But on increasing American exports, on simplifying our tax system, on rebuilding our infrastructure, my hope is that we can get some things done. I've never been persuaded by this argument that if it weren't for the executive actions, they would have been more productive. There's no evidence of that. So I intend to continue to do what I've been doing. Which is where I see a big problem and the opportunity to help the American people. And it is within my lawful authority to provide that help. I'm going to do it. And I will then, side by side, reach out to members of Congress. Reach out to Republicans, and say, let's work together. I'd rather do it with you. Immigration is the classic example. I was really happy when the Senate passed a bipartisan, comprehensive immigration bill. And I did everything I could for a year and a half to provide Republicans the space to act, and showed not only great patience, but flexibility, saying to them, look, if there are specific changes you'd like to see, we're willing to compromise. We're willing to be patient, we're willing to work with you. Ultimately it wasn't forthcoming. And so the question is going to be, I think, if executive actions on areas like minimum wage, or equal pay, or having a more sensible immigration system are important to Republicans, if they care about those issues. And the executive actions are bothering them, there is a very simple solution, and that is, pass bills. And work with me to make sure I'm willing to sign those bills. Because both sides are going to have to compromise. On most issues, in order for their initiatives to become law, I'm going to have sign off. And that means they have to take into account the issues that I care about. Just as I'm going to have to take into account the issues that they care about. All right. I think this is going to be our last question. Juliet Eilperin. There you go. Question, thanks so much. So one of the first bills that Mitch McConnell said he will send to you is one that would authorize the construction of the Keystone XL pipeline. When you talked about this in the past, you've minimized the benefits and you highlighted some of the risks associated with that project. I'm wondering if you could tell us both what you would do when faced with that bill. given the Republican majority that we'll have in both chambers. And also, what do you see as the benefits? And given the precipitous drop we've seen in oil prices recently, does that change the calculus in terms of how it will contribute to climate change, and whether you think it makes sense to go ahead with that project? President Obama: well, I don't think I've minimized the benefits, I think I've described the benefits. At issue in Keystone is not American oil. It is Canadian oil that is drawn out of tar sands in Canada. That oil currently is being shipped out through rail or trucks. And it would save Canadian oil companies and the Canadian oil industry an enormous amount of money if they could simply pipe it all the way through the United States down to the Gulf. Once that oil gets to the Gulf, it is then entering into the world market. And it would be sold all around the world. So there's no, I won't say no, there is very little impact, nominal impact, on you. As gas prices what the average American consumer cares about by having this pipeline come through. And sometimes the way this gets sold is, let's get this oil and it's going to come here. And the implication is that's going to lower gas prices here in the United States. It's not. There's a global oil market. It's very good for Canadian oil companies and it's good for the Canadian oil industry. But it's not going to be a huge benefit to US consumers. It's not even going to be a nominal benefit to US consumers. Now, the construction of the pipeline itself will create probably a couple thousand jobs. Those are temporary jobs until the construction actually happens. There's probably some additional jobs that can be created in the refining process down in the Gulf. Those aren't completely insignificant, it's just like any other project. But when you consider what we could be doing if we were rebuilding our roads, and bridges around the country, something that Congress could authorize. We could probably create hundreds of thousands of jobs, or 1 million jobs. So if that's the argument, there are a lot more direct ways to create well-paying Americans' construction jobs. And then, with respect to the cost, all I've said is that I want to make sure that if, in fact, this project goes forward, that it's not adding to the problem of climate change, which I think is very serious and does. Impose serious costs on the American people, some of them long-term, but significant costs nonetheless. If we've got more flooding, more wildfires, more drought, there are direct economic impacts on that. And as we're now rebuilding after Sandy, for example, we're having to consider how do we increase preparedness in how we structure infrastructure and housing, and so forth, along the Jersey Shore. That's an example of the kind of costs that are imposed, and you can put a dollar figure on it. So, in terms of process, you've got a Nebraska judge that's still determining whether or not the new path for this pipeline is appropriate. Once that is resolved, then the State Department will have all the information it needs to make its decision. But I've just tried to give this perspective. Because I think that there's been this tendency to really hype this thing as some magic formula to what ails the you. S economy, and it's hard to see on paper where exactly they're getting that information from. In terms of oil prices and how it impacts the decision. I think that it won't have a significant impact except perhaps in the minds of folks when gas prices are lower. Maybe they're less susceptible to the argument that this is the answer to lowering gas prices. But it was never going to be the answer to lowering gas prices. Because the oil that would be piped through the Keystone pipeline would go into the world market. And that's what determines oil prices, ultimately. Question, and in terms of Congress forcing your hand on this. Is this something where you clearly say you're not going to let Congress force your hand on whether to approve or disapprove of this? President Obama, I'll see what they do. We'll take that up in the new year. Question, any New Year's resolutions? President Obama, I'll ask April, go ahead. Question, thank you, Mr. President. Last question, I guess. 6 years ago this month, I asked you what was the state of Black America in the Oval Office. And you said it was the best of times and the worst of times. You said it was the best of times in the sense that there has never been more opportunity for African Americans to receive a good education, and the worst of times for unemployment and the lack of opportunity. We're ending 2014. What is the state of Black America as we talk? About those issues as well as racial issues in this country? President Obama, like the rest of America. Black America in the aggregate is better off now than it was when I came into office. The jobs that have been created, the people who've gotten health insurance. The housing equity that's been recovered, the 401 pensions that have been recovered. A lot of those folks are African American. They're better off than they were. The gap between income and wealth of white and Black America persists. And we've got more work to do on that front. I've been consistent in saying that this is a legacy of a troubled racial past of Jim Crow and slavery. That's not an excuse for Black folks. And I think the overwhelming majority of Black people understand it's not an excuse. They're working hard. They're out there hustling and trying to get an education. Trying to send their kids to college. But they're starting behind, oftentimes, in the race. And what's true for all Americans is we should be willing to provide people a hand up, not a handout. But help folks get that good early childhood education, help them graduate from high school, help them afford college. If they do, they're going to be able to succeed, and that's going to be good for all of us. And we've seen some progress. The education reforms that we've initiated are showing measurable results. We have the highest high school graduation that we've seen in a very long time. We are seeing record numbers of young people attending college. In many states that have initiated reforms, you're seeing progress in math scores and reading scores for African American and Latino students as well as the broader population. But we've still got more work to go.